call asking ordinance questions, it automatically goes to him.
Yeah.
If they ask
Got it
about
from him.
trying to buy properties, then,
Forward
you know,
to him.
that's different. If they start asking, we had a couple here today.
Oh, really?
One, not from North Dakota, but somewhere else. Yeah, they routed over to him. Specifically asked. Yeah, that was a couple of years.
It's 5:30, so we'll call to order this meeting for Monday, September 27th. Karl, would you start us off with a roll call, please?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Present.
Remley.
Present.
Lunsman.
Present.
Reif.
Present.
Johnson.
Present.
Reinbold.
Present.
Langer. Rux.
Present.
Mayor Schoeneman.
Present. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Unaware of any changes to the agenda as printed, so I would take a motion to approve it.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Rux and a second from Councilman Remley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion does carry. Next, we've got the approval of last week's meetings from the meeting of September 20th. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes? as
Move
printed?
to approve. Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Johnson and a second from Councilman Reinbold. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion does carry. Right along to our open forum, we've got one speaker signed up to speak here today. It's Mr. Troy McQuillan, who will be telling us about his ideas for the two-way Main Street. Troy, make sure that the green light is on back there. Sometimes that's not right off the
Do I have
gate.
access to the overhead camera at all?
Karl, what have we got?
I mean, it's not a big deal, but I just got a couple pictures.
Is it possible, Karl?
Yeah, if you place it on the table there, probably switch the monitor.
Sure. You want me to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does not appear that anything's showing up.
Short answer is no.
And if you wish, Troy, perhaps you could just pass them to the end
I
of
can
the
just pass
council.
them around,
And then
yeah.
they could make their way around. And, oh,
the essence of this photo essentially shows that virtually anything and any configuration is possible downtown Aberdeen. I was surprised to find one that showed 3 lanes of one-way traffic all going north. I have no idea why they did that, but from my perspective, I've been a downtown property owner since 2002, and this conversation keeps coming up over and over and over again. And I'm to the point now where it's like, let's just try it. We got nothing to lose other than a tremendous resource to do it and retraining of people. But it's been done before. It's worked before. It's been two-way with diagonal parking during downtown's busiest eras back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. I mean, just thousands of people down there, and there's people walking all over the streets, no one getting run over. So it got me to thinking, why do we have a one-way now? And I don't know if you guys have studied this or looked into it, but it was basically created, as far as I can tell, to keep people out of downtown. Downtown property owner, business owners were concerned about people using downtown as a thoroughfare to get to 6th Avenue. So they wanted to put a stop to that on the north end by the flame there. And I cannot understand for the life of me why you would want to repel people from your business district. It just doesn't make a lot of sense these days. And the emphasis was to keep traffic limited only to shopping traffic. Well, where does shopping traffic come from? But from the community. So they were basically blocking the community out. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but Main Street was one way north, and Lincoln and First was one way the other direction, creating this loop. It was very strange, and they ultimately gave up on the side street one ways pretty quickly. I don't know when that was abolished, but I would be very much in support of a two-way Main Street again. One of the things mentioned back in the 70s when it was changed to one way was safety and parking. They went to diagonal, which did save a lot of, or increase a lot of parking places. But it just seems like now would be a time to give it a shot. And it's like, every idea seems to have its time. You look at the studies they did back in the 70s, and it just made great sense to. It was this loop concept that they had created, and it just kept people from traveling through. And Vistoya tried to change it. I don't know what year that was. It was. Maybe 10 years ago when he kind of pushed an effort, and it didn't go through. There are all kinds of barriers that were mentioned, just retraining people. But the beautiful thing we have now is backup cameras, which I think would come in really handy for a lot of people who are concerned about backing up and that sort of thing. So I would like to say, however, that if this were to proceed with a plan, it would be nice at the same time to restore some of the items downtown, like the railings and the bike racks, and a lot of the metal things that have rusted over time pretty badly. And I attribute it to the salt on the sidewalk that's causing a lot of the deterioration of the paint on the fixtures. But it needs a really good spiff up. The landscaping's amazing, but it's just, you just see the rust and the paint flaking off everywhere. And I was on the committee that worked on the streetscape revitalization plan. It just kind of makes me feel bad to see it kind of looking the way it does. But again, I would wholly support a two-way Main Street and love to invite more businesses and people in the community to downtown.
Thank you very much, Troy. Appreciate your input on that, and thanks also for preserving those old photos. That's always something I look forward to seeing online. All right. We will move along to our consent calendar item, where we've got the busiest consent calendar I've ever seen, I think, here. So if anyone is taking a look at that and would be willing to make a motion to approve all of those items.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Ronan and a second from Councilman Remley. Does anyone have anything on any of these items? All right, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion does carry. Next, we've got the new business section of our meeting here today. The first item of new business is our public hearing following the possible first reading of the ordinance regarding the zoning of the cannabis establishments. This would be the possible first reading, and here to tell us all about that is Ron.
Thank you,
City
Mr. Mayor.
Attorney.
I will have Brett hop in when he thinks is appropriate, and also Jeremiah Maxfield, who is the GIS technician for the city. But I wanted to start by informing the council of the progression of the marijuana zoning ordinance. Recall that we had 2 work sessions on this to kind of hammer out the language. That resulted in a proposed ordinance that then had to go to the Planning Commission for its review and recommendation. That occurred on September 21st, I believe, if I'm getting my times correctly. At the Planning Commission meeting, they of course voted unanimously to recommend approval of the marijuana zoning ordinance, and had some questions about the zoning districts that were being included in certain of the establishments, very similar to the ones this council raised during the work session. They also made a suggestion for a change, and so I will be requesting that we make a couple of of changes to the ordinance, assuming there's a motion to approve. I also wanted to let the council know that Jeremiah Maxfield is here to put on the screen, if the council is interested, to see a map of what the allowed areas would be within the identified business districts, commercial districts, and the industrial districts, as well as taking into account the exclusion areas, the sensitive zones, such as the schools, which requires 1,000-foot buffer, and then other sensitive use areas that the council identified, including churches, libraries, daycares, and that was at 150 feet. So Jeremiah can put that has that up on the map for you folks. In color, you'll see the zoning districts that would permit those kinds of uses for the cannabis establishments. And then if he were to go in deeper, he could identify the restricted areas as set forth in the current language of the ordinance. But with that, the administration would recommend approval of this marijuana zoning ordinance.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Renane and a second from Councilman Rux. What kind of questions has the council got? Ron, could you tell us what the specific changes were from the zoning board?
So before Karl, could I have you pull that up for me, please? That red line version that I had sent out earlier to the council. At Karl's monitor, not mine, Gene. Okay, there we go. Karl, would you go to the second page of that? So, council members, at section 60-361, there was a recommendation from the Planning Commission that we clarify the measuring distances for both the existing use and the proposed dispensary. So you'll see at 362 sub D a red line change that would read as follows: prescribed separation distances from certain existing uses and where the dispensary is proposed are to be measured from the lot lines of the properties. So that would be the first recommended change that we would like to see. The second, go back to the first page please, Karl, is at 60-353, and this followed a conversation I had with Mike Howdyshell, who is the Chief Legal Counsel for the South Dakota Department of Revenue. And this is a question of timing. What we see in the state statute is that the state is not approving applications for cannabis establishments unless they can show a permit already issued by the local jurisdiction. And they recognize that there's this kind of who goes first theory going around with a lot of municipalities. So what you see at 60-353 is my effort to address that. So the red line language there says that they could also get a permit if they can show that from the state of South Dakota they have submitted a completed application. And according to Mr. Howdyshell, the state licensing, actually they call it a registration certificate, will follow a completed application. It is a very objective process for them. And I reference down in that as a footnote the particular statute, which is SDCL 34-20G-55, and you can see in 1E is where they require a copy. So this is an effort to address the timing issue. So that language would now read, no cannabis establishment shall acquire, possess, store, deliver, transfer, transport, supply, or dispense cannabis products, or paraphernalia in the corporate limits of the city without a valid license, such as a registration certificate issued by the state of South Dakota. to obtain an initial permit from the city, the requirement for a valid license may be met by providing verification from the state of South Dakota of the submission to it of a completed application for a cannabis establishment satisfying all conditions for registration except a copy of the permit from the city.
And there's no threat that that'll just get thrown out at the state level because they haven't got the local permit at that stage.
What would happen at that point is if for some reason it did not get approved, then the state, of course, could step in and stop it simply because it's not licensed. And to operate a cannabis establishment, you have to have a state license. And so they would not permit that. So even though we had issued a permit, it wouldn't matter.
I'd move those two amendments.
Second.
I've got a motion from Councilman Ronan and a second from Councilman Rux to submit the two amendments as indicated by City Attorney Ron Wager. Does anyone have any questions or comments on those?
Do you have one question?
Go ahead, Dave.
When do they have a certain amount of time that they need to establish a business by the time that they get these permits and everybody okays it? Is there a timeline?
The state is going to require that they have an active operation within a year of the issuance. And that's going to be similar to what you see with our language, requiring that they have active operations as well within that year.
Okay.
And someone on our end will have no problem verifying that the person has met all the other requirements of the state.
In fact, the Department of Revenue, I understand, is going to issue guidance to municipalities on this, guidance to local governments, frankly. And we had talked about something along the lines of a certification of completed application, but something that the state could provide to local governments showing that they in fact have a completed application. Because once they have a completed application on their side, it's just a matter of approving that.
Josh?
Ron, are these licenses transferable? How does
They
that-
are not.
They are not.
And there's language afoot, I understand, to make sure that that's clearly spelled out in statute, that they will not be transferable.
Any other questions on the amendment themselves? Okay, Karl, would you give us a roll call vote on the amendment?
Councilmember Ronan,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Schoeneman.
Aye, motion does carry. That amendment will be included in the reading. Any other questions or concerns, comments on the ordinance itself? Jeremiah, I've got a real quick question for you since you're here and since you've got the map up in front of us. Was there a number of potential business locations that were excluded because of the 150-foot radius of parks, synagogues, churches, and so forth, or did it pretty much fall into blank territory?
Everything that is highlighted in the zoning right now is what falls, so that's where all the zoning areas where it could be. I can pull up the actual graphics to show you the circles that would be off limits if you guys would like.
Yeah,
me
would you?
to. Yeah.
Anything that's colored is where it'd be permitted. So whether it be red, pink, blue,
Is where
Yeah,
it
I
is permitted or is not permitted?
is permitted.
And
So all these circles are gonna be your 150-foot radius from your parks, churches, daycares, and then we have the 1,000 feet from the schools. Then you can see all the zoning areas that's colored is the areas where it would be permitted.
so where your cursor's at now, that's the Methodist Church on 6th Avenue.
Correct. And turn the road back on if you would like.
And the furthest perimeter dotted line, that's the 150 foot.
Correct. That one, Max, you might be a 300-foot one. So.
Yeah, that's 300 foot.
Yep. Might click on one of them. Yep. So the inner circle on these ones, the computer's messing up right now, is so that's your 300 feet. That's why it's bleeding into it.
So for instance, in this one, I don't know if you're familiar, so Troy McQuillan had spoken at the beginning of this meeting. He owns the building that is on the corner of Main and 5th. That one would be off limits because of the edge of the lot due to the perimeter around the First Methodist Church. as an example.
Correct.
But there, actually, if you look at it, a lot of downtown is still available. I mean,
Yep.
you know, like I say, I mean, I thought this could be worse than what it was, but, you know, for the central business district, and of course, you know, you can't really take the railroad property, but, you know, like I say, I mean, it's basically what would be almost a car wash in M&H and just a little bit around the Methodist Church and some off on the Washington Street, but.
And then would you zoom out a little bit, or actually just scroll over on 6th Avenue and just kind of head east and see where the affected areas would be? So the big circles are schools.
Yep, the white ones will be schools.
And yellows are churches and greens are parks.
Correct. The churches are yellow, greens are park, and then there's the blue. The light blue is your daycares.
Everyone's all right with that? Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions that anyone might have? All right, well, we've got our motion and our second on the first reading of this ordinance itself. If no one else has any other questions for anyone else involved, I would have Karl give us a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got the possible first reading. Oh, thank you for joining us here, Jeremiah. Appreciate it. Possible first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 50 taxation of the Aberdeen City Code regarding refunds from certain sales and use taxes. And City Manager Joe Gaa will start us off in the conversation about that.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is something we started working on several months ago. It's an economic development incentive that already exists within the city code, but I think it's only been used once in the time it's been around, which has been several years. There've been a couple other times, but it's just seen as somewhat restrictive. So we wanted to take a look at it, and it actually went, we took some recommendations to a council committee, and what you're seeing in front of you is what came out of that. But just to summarize it a little bit, it used to have incentives of investment that started at $5 million for certain things, $10 million for others. The recommendation is to cut that down from $5 million to $2 million and $10 million to $5 million. And there were also two levels of incentives. One was dollar investment, and then the second one was more of a qualitative type of things. Did it add jobs, and that sort of thing. We're recommending just combining the two, that the money is the first 50%, and then the qualitative adds to the potential refund, and then all of those will come to the council for final approval. Staff will review and recommend and bring those. This does not apply to it says predominantly for the sale of retail, predominantly for housing, predominantly for healthcare, and does not relate to property taxes. So this is really for industrial type of investment is where it's usually, some types of commercial, but it is fairly limiting. Staff does believe that this will make it a little bit more of a usable incentive that we might see more takers on, and recommends approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Rux and a second from Councilman Johnson. I know it's been an issue that we've discussed at some length here. Does anyone have any questions for the city manager on it? Good. Well, I appreciate the effort to make it a little bit easier to incentivize those businesses. Karl, would you give us a roll call vote on the first reading, please?
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got the possible license to permit a wheelchair ramp encroachment on the right-of-way abutting 1024 South First Street. This would be the possible approval of the request by Stephen Nemmers for license to encroach upon the right-of-way at that address. And City Manager Ron Wager will tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, we see these on occasion, and this was at the request of a property owner who's having an elderly relative move into their home. And they needed to encroach approximately 5 feet into the right-of-way, and I've prepared a license that would allow them to do that. And then the license would terminate upon a number of conditions, one, of course, being if that relative no longer requires the use of the road. So I'd ask that the council approve this right-of-way encroachment.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Ronayne and a second from Councilman, was that you, Remley? Councilman Remley. Any questions on this one? Thoughts, concerns, comments? All right, then. Karl, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Wright,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got the review and approval of the claims and payroll. The bills will be, of course, for the week of September 27th, and the payroll is for the pay period of September 12th through the 25th, as well as the Social Security, old age, survivors insurance, retirement, health, and life insurance that's associated with those payments. Can I get a motion to pay those bills and payroll items?
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Lunsman, a second from Councilman Reinbold. Karl, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Wright,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got the city manager's report. What have you got for us here tonight, Joe?
You know, I think this is the first time this has happened in my tenure, but I really don't have any official serious city business for my report. And so I was kind of scrambling today, but I've been involved in one of the interview panels for the new athletic director at the university, and the 3 finalists have been in. But one of the things that this community group talks about is what is there to do in Aberdeen and why Aberdeen. And you know, we've just come off of homecomings of the high schools and presentation, and Northerns is here. We've talked about, you know, football season, basketball season, all the things you can do. And one thing when you're sitting around a table trying to convince somebody to come to Aberdeen, you realize I almost never am wanting something to do. There's always so much to do here. And it's almost like we apologize that Aberdeen's not a huge, big city, but we've got an awful lot of things going on here. We've got a lot of great community organizations doing wonderful things, and the quality of life here is very good. And I think most of us probably end up in saying, well, we're glad it's not a town of 100,000 people, but we sure have a lot of things going on here. So just kudos to the community for all the good things they have going on.
Thank you very much, Joe. That was heartfelt and appreciated. Anything else from the council before we move to adjourn this meeting? All right, then I would take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Johnson, a second from Councilman Ronayne. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion does carry. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.